The smoke was still rising from the broken buildings when Corporal Tae-ho stepped through the ruins. His boots crunched against burned metal and shattered glass. The battle had ended 3 hours ago, but the air still smelled like fire and death. Tae-ho was 28 years old. He had been a soldier for 6 years. In that time, he had seen many terrible things. But today felt different. Today, something heavy sat in his chest as he walked through the destroyed Corvani outpost. The Corvani were insect-like aliens. They had hard shells covering their bodies. They had 4 arms and walked on 2 legs. Their eyes were large and black, like pools of darkness. For 50 years, humans and Corvani had been at war. Nobody remembered exactly why it started anymore. It just continued, year after year, death after death. His radio crackled. "Tae-ho, status report," said Sergeant Ha-na's voice. "Still searching the east section," he replied. "Nothing yet. Hurry up. Transport leaves in 2 hours." Tae-ho continued walking. His job was simple. Search for survivors or useful information. Report anything important. Move on. He climbed over a collapsed wall and found himself in a different kind of room. It was not a military space. The walls were painted with soft colors. There were broken containers on the floor that looked like they once held food. Small blankets were scattered everywhere. Tae-ho stopped. He understood what this place was. A nursery. His stomach turned. He knew the Corvani had children. He knew they had families. But seeing this room made it real in a way that battle reports never could. These were not just enemy soldiers. They were people. They had babies. They had lives. He was about to leave when he heard it. A small sound. Very quiet, like clicking mixed with crying. Tae-ho froze. He listened carefully. The sound came from beneath a pile of fallen ceiling panels in the corner. He moved slowly toward it, his heart beating faster with each step. He knelt down and began to move the panels aside. They were heavy, but he was strong. One by one, he lifted them away. And then he saw it. A tiny Corvani larva. It was no bigger than a human baby. Its shell was soft and pale, not yet hardened like an adult. Its large black eyes looked up at Tae-ho with pure terror. It made that clicking, crying sound again, trembling in fear. Tae-ho's training told him what to do. The Corvani were the enemy. Even their children would grow up to be soldiers who would kill humans. He should report this, or simply walk away and let nature take its course. But he could not move. The larva was shaking. It was alone. It was scared. It was just a baby. Tae-ho thought about his own nephew back on Earth. Little Jun-soo, who was only 2 years old. Jun-soo cried the same way when he was frightened. Different species, different planet, different everything. But fear looked the same in any child's eyes. "Hey," Tae-ho whispered softly. "Hey, it's okay." The larva clicked louder, trying to crawl backward away from him. Tae-ho did not reach for his weapon. Instead, he slowly removed his jacket. Very carefully, very gently, he wrapped it around the small creature. The larva struggled at first, but the warmth of the fabric seemed to calm it slightly. "I'm not going to hurt you," Tae-ho said quietly. "I promise." He picked up the wrapped bundle and held it against his chest. The larva was lighter than he expected. He could feel it trembling through the jacket. What was he doing? This was insane. If anyone found out, he would face serious punishment. Helping an enemy species was against all military rules. He could be called a traitor. But as he looked down at the small, frightened creature in his arms, Tae-ho knew he could not leave it here to die. Whatever this thing would grow up to become, right now it was just a scared baby who had lost everything. He adjusted his jacket to hide the larva completely. Then he walked back toward the transport area. Sergeant Ha-na was waiting near the ship. She was a tough woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Tae-ho tried to walk past her normally. "Find anything?" she asked. No, Taeho lied. Nothing useful. Hana looked at him for a long moment. Something about his expression made her suspicious. But before she could ask more questions, other soldiers arrived and she was distracted by organizing the departure. Taeho climbed into the transport and found a seat in the back corner, away from everyone else. He sat down carefully, keeping the bundle hidden under his arm. The larva made a small, hungry sound. Taeho waited until no one was looking, then reached into his supply pack and pulled out some nutrient paste. He squeezed a tiny amount onto his finger and carefully fed it to the creature under his jacket. The larva ate eagerly. When it finished, it made a different sound, softer, almost like satisfaction. Taeho felt something strange in his chest. It was not fear or guilt. It was something warmer. He looked down at the hidden bundle and whispered, "Just hold on, little one. I'll figure something out." The transport ship lifted off. Below them, the destroyed Corvani outpost grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Taeho leaned his head back and closed his eyes. He had no idea what he was going to do. He had no plan. He only knew one thing for certain. He had just saved a life. And regardless of what happened next, he could not make himself regret it. The journey back to human space would take 3 days. 3 days to hide an alien child from his own people. 3 days to figure out his next move. Taeho held the sleeping larva closer to his chest and listened to its quiet breathing. Somewhere in the universe, this little creature had a mother who was probably crying for her lost child. Taeho did not know who she was or where she was, but he made a silent promise to himself and to the baby in his arms. He would find a way to make things right, no matter what it cost him. Taeho barely slept. Every time the larva made a sound, his heart jumped with fear. Every time another soldier walked past his corner of the transport, he held his breath. The ship was crowded with 40 soldiers returning from battle. They talked loudly about the fight. They joked about victory. Some of them described killing Corvani with pride in their voices. Taeho sat in his corner and said nothing. He smiled when he had to. He nodded when expected, but inside he felt like a stranger among his own people. On the second day, the larva got sick. Taeho noticed it in the morning. The little creature was not eating anymore. Its skin color had changed from pale white to a grayish shade. It made weak clicking sounds and barely moved. Taeho panicked quietly. He knew nothing about Corvani biology. He did not know what to feed it. He did not know if the nutrient paste was wrong for its body. He did not know anything. He needed help. Private Sung Jin was the squad medic. He was a young man, only 23 years old, with a gentle face and kind eyes. Taeho had known him for 2 years. Sung Jin had once spent his entire rest leave helping at a refugee shelter instead of going home. He was the most compassionate person Taeho knew. Taeho waited until night, when most soldiers were sleeping. Then he found Sung Jin in the medical bay, organizing supplies. "I need your help," Taeho said quietly. "But you cannot tell anyone." Sung Jin looked up with curiosity. "What kind of help?" Taeho closed the door behind him. He checked 3 times to make sure no one else was nearby. Then he opened his jacket. Sung Jin's eyes went wide. His mouth fell open. For a long moment he could not speak. Is that a Corvani?" he whispered. "A baby," Taeho said. "I found it in the ruins. It was alone and scared. I couldn't leave it to die." Sung Jin stared at the sick larva. His face showed many emotions: shock, confusion, and then slowly understanding. "It looks unwell," he said finally. "I think I'm feeding it wrong. I don't know what to do." Sung Jin was quiet for a while. Taeho could see him thinking, weighing the risks. Then the young medic nodded. "Let me examine it." For the next hour, Sungjin worked carefully. He scanned the larva with his medical equipment. He researched Corvani biology in the ship's database, being careful to hide his search history. He found that Corvani larvae needed a special sugar compound in their food that human nutrient paste did not have. Sungjin mixed a new solution using supplies from the medical bay. When he fed it to the larva, the little creature ate eagerly. Within hours, its color started to return to normal. "Thank you," Taeho said with deep relief. Sungjin looked at him seriously. "Taeho, what are you planning to do? You can't hide a Corvani baby forever." "I know. I need time to think. If anyone finds out, I know." Sungjin was quiet again. Then he said something that surprised Taeho. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old wars on Earth. She said that people would find enemy children in destroyed cities. Some soldiers killed them, some ignored them, but some saved them. She said those were the ones who kept their humanity." Taeho looked at his young friend. "So you understand?" Sungjin nodded slowly. "I understand," but their secret did not last. On the third day, Sergeant Hana cornered Taeho in the cargo hold. She stood in front of the door with her arms crossed and her eyes sharp like knives. "Show me what you're hiding," she said. Taeho's blood turned cold. "I don't know what you—" "Don't lie to me. I've been watching you for 3 days. Something is wrong. You're not eating with the others. You're not sleeping. You keep whispering to your jacket like a crazy person." She stepped closer. "Show me. Now." Taeho knew there was no escape. Slowly, with shaking hands, he opened his jacket and revealed the larva. Hana's face went pale. She looked at the alien child, then at Taeho, then back at the child. Her hands clenched into fists. "Are you insane?" she hissed. "Do you know what they will do to you? This is treason, Taeho. They will put you in prison for the rest of your life." "I couldn't let it die," Taeho said quietly. "It's the enemy. It's a baby." Hana grabbed his arm hard. "A baby that will grow up to kill humans. A baby whose species has murdered millions of our people. You want to protect that?" Taeho looked her in the eyes. "When did we become people who kill children? When did that become who we are?" Hana opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She stared at him for a long moment. Then Sungjin appeared at the door. "Sergeant, please. Let me show you something." He brought up his scanner and showed Hana the readings from the larva. He pointed to specific markings on the creature's soft shell. "These symbols," Sungjin said. "I found them in the database. They're royal marks. This isn't just any Corvani child." Hana frowned. "What do you mean?" "This is a prince, the child of their queen." The silence that followed was heavy. Hana looked at the tiny creature sleeping in Taeho's arms. A prince. The son of the Corvani queen, the most important child in their entire empire. "Do you understand what this means?" she finally said. "If the queen thinks we killed her son, she will burn everything," Sungjin finished. "Every human colony, every ship, everything." Hana pressed her hands against her face. She breathed deeply several times. When she looked up again, her expression had changed. The anger was still there, but something else was there too. Something like determination. "No one else finds out about this," she said firmly. "Not until we land. Then we figure out what to do." "You're going to help us?" Taeho asked. Hana looked at the sleeping larva. Her voice was tired but steady. "I joined the military to protect people, Taeho. All people. Even if some days I forget that." She paused. "Besides, if we don't handle this carefully, we might be responsible for the deaths of billions." Taeho felt tears forming in his eyes. "Thank you, Sergeant." Hana shook her head. "Don't thank me yet. We haven't figured out how to survive this yet." The transport ship continued through space, carrying its secret passenger toward an uncertain future. And somewhere far away, a grieving queen prepared her armies for revenge. The Corvani throne world was called Catharis Prime. It was a massive planet covered with crystal towers and underground cities. Billions of Corvani lived there, all serving their queen. Queen Vithara stood at the top of the highest tower. Her body was tall and powerful, covered in a shell of deep purple that showed her royal blood. She had ruled for 60 years. In that time, she had led her people through many wars, many victories, and many losses. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. A messenger knelt before her, trembling with fear. He had just delivered the worst news possible. "Say it again," the queen commanded. Her voice was cold like ice. The messenger could barely speak. "The nursery outpost on Eris 7 was attacked by humans, my queen. We found the remains of the guards and caretakers. But Prince Lithis, your son, he is missing. We believe he was killed in the attack." Queen Vithara did not move. She did not speak. She simply stood there, her 4 arms hanging at her sides, her large black eyes staring at nothing. Lithis, her youngest child, her baby. She remembered the day he was born, so small and soft, barely able to make sounds. She remembered holding him for the first time, feeling his tiny heart beat against her chest. She remembered his first words, his first steps, his first laugh. And now, he was gone. Killed by humans. Something inside Queen Vithara broke. Something that had kept her calm and controlled for 60 years simply shattered. In its place came something dark and terrible. Rage. "Leave me," she whispered to the messenger. He ran away as fast as he could. Alone in her tower, Queen Vithara screamed. The sound was so loud and full of pain that it echoed across the entire palace. Guards in distant hallways heard it and felt fear. Ministers in their offices stopped working and looked toward the sky. Everyone knew what that sound meant. Their queen was suffering. Hours later, Queen Vithara called a meeting of her highest commanders. They gathered in the Great War Room, a massive chamber filled with maps of the galaxy and screens showing the positions of every Corvani fleet. High Commander Borath stood at the front. He was old and battle-worn, with scars across his shell from countless fights. He had hated humans since the very first day of the war. To him, they were nothing but animals. Violent, stupid, dangerous animals that needed to be destroyed. "My queen," he said, "we have confirmed the attack. Human Alliance forces struck the Eris 7 outpost without warning. They killed everyone there, including..." He paused. "Including the prince." Other commanders lowered their heads in sorrow. Queen Vithara sat on her throne, her expression unreadable. When she spoke, her voice was flat and empty. "How many ships do we have ready for battle?" Borath checked his screen. 3,000 warships, my queen. We can mobilize another 2,000 within 10 days. Mobilize all of them." The commanders looked at each other nervously. One of them, a younger female named Kelith, stepped forward carefully. "My queen, may I speak?" Vethera nodded. "A fleet of 5,000 ships. This would be the largest military action in Corvani history." "What is the target?" Queen Vithara's eyes finally showed emotion. They burned with hatred. "Earth," she said. "The human homeworld. We will destroy it. We will destroy every human colony, every human ship, every human who breathes will stop breathing." Silence filled the room. Commander Keleth's voice was gentle. "My queen, this would mean total war. Billions would die, both humans and Corvani. The other species in the galaxy would..." "I do not care," Vithara interrupted. "They took my son. They murdered a child, my child. There is no response too extreme. There is no punishment too severe." High Commander Borath smiled. He had waited decades for this moment. My queen speaks wisely, he said loudly. The humans have shown us who they truly are. They are monsters who kill babies. They deserve extinction. But the Galactic Council, Commander Kelleth tried again. The Council can watch, Vathara said coldly. Let them see what happens when you take something precious from us. Let every species in the galaxy learn this lesson. The orders went out that same day. Every Corvani ship was called to prepare for war. Factories that had been making consumer goods switched to producing weapons. Young Corvani, who had never held a weapon in their lives, signed up to fight. The galaxy watched in horror. Messages came from the Galactic Council begging Queen Vathara to negotiate. She ignored them. Messages came from neutral species offering to help find peace. She deleted them without reading. The Human Alliance sent an emergency communication, asking what had happened and offering to investigate. Vathara responded with 4 words: prepare to die. Across human space, panic spread. People on Earth watched the news and saw the massive Corvani fleet being assembled. They saw the fire in Queen Vathara's eyes during her broadcast to the galaxy. They understood that she meant every terrible word. Parents held their children tighter. Families said goodbyes they hoped would not be final. Soldiers prepared for a fight they knew they could not win. 3,000 Corvani warships against a few hundred human vessels. It would not be a war. It would be a slaughter. In her tower on Catharis Prime, Queen Vathara looked at a small image of her son. It was taken when Lithis was just a few weeks old. In the image, he was sleeping peacefully, his soft shell glowing in the light. I will avenge you, she whispered to the image. I will make them pay for what they did. Every last one of them. A single tear rolled down her face. Then her expression hardened again. In 10 days, her fleet would be ready. In 20 days, they would reach human space. And then the killing would begin. She did not know, could not know, that her son was still alive. That at this very moment, a human soldier was holding her baby gently, feeding him, keeping him warm, protecting him from harm. She did not know that the monster she was preparing to destroy was actually her son's savior. But she would learn. Soon. The fate of billions hung in the balance, and everything depended on one simple question. Could the truth reach her in time? Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a massive underground complex, military leaders shouted at each other across a long table. Screens on every wall showed the same terrifying images. Thousands of Corvani warships gathering, ready to bring death to every human world. Admiral Yun-Sik was the highest commander in the human military. He was 70 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. In his long career, he had never faced a crisis like this one. We cannot win this fight, he said bluntly. Our entire fleet is 300 ships. They have 3,000, maybe 5,000 by the time they reach us. We need another solution. General Park Jun slammed his fist on the table. What solution? The Corvani Queen is insane with grief. Her son is dead and she blames us. She won't negotiate, she won't listen. What can we possibly offer her? Maybe we could, began another officer. The door to the war room burst open. Everyone turned to look. A young intelligence officer rushed in, breathing hard. Sir, she said to Admiral Yun-Sik, you need to see this immediately. We decoded some Corvani transmissions. We know why the Queen is so angry. She put a data chip into the main screen. Corvani messages appeared, translated into human language. The Queen's youngest son was at the Eris 7 outpost, the officer explained. Prince Lithis, he's missing. The Corvani believe we killed him during our attack. The room went silent. Admiral Yun-Sik read the messages slowly. His face grew pale. We didn't know there was a royal child there, General Park Jun said. Our intelligence never mentioned. It doesn't matter what we knew, Yun-Sik interrupted. What matters is what happened. Did we kill this prince or not? No one could answer. The attack had been brutal. The entire outpost was destroyed, if there had been a child there. If we killed her son, Yun-sik said quietly, then there is no hope for peace. A mother who loses her child will never forgive, never. The despair in the room was thick enough to touch. At that moment, another door opened. 3 people walked in. Corporal Taeho, Sergeant Hana, Private Sung-jin. Admiral Yun-sik frowned. Who are you? This is a restricted meeting. Taeho stepped forward. His face was calm but determined. Sir, I have something to show you. Something that might save us all. He opened his jacket. The entire room gasped. Some officers reached for their weapons. Others simply stared in shock. In Taeho's arms was a small Corvani larva, wrapped in a soft blanket. It was awake, looking around the room with curious black eyes. This is Prince Lithus, Taeho said. I found him in the ruins of the outpost. I saved him. He is alive and healthy. For several seconds, no one could speak. Then everyone spoke at once. How is this possible? Is this real? You hit an enemy. This changes everything. Admiral Yun-sik raised his hand for silence. His eyes were fixed on the tiny creature in Taeho's arms. You saved him, he said slowly. The enemy's prince. You could have killed him. You could have left him to die. But you saved him. Yes, sir. Why? Taeho looked down at the larva. Little Lithus made a soft clicking sound and reached toward his face with tiny arms. Because he was a scared child, sir. Because I couldn't look at a baby and choose to let it die. Because... He paused. Because I hoped that being human meant something more than just winning wars. The room was completely silent. General Park Jun was the first to react. This is perfect, he said, his voice excited. We have their prince. We can use him as a hostage. Tell the queen to back down or we'll... No, Taeho said firmly. Excuse me? No. We are not using a child as a hostage. We are not threatening to hurt a baby to save ourselves. Park Jun's face turned red with anger. Billions of human lives are at stake. Your feelings about one alien child don't matter. They matter to me, Taeho said quietly. Hana stepped forward. Sir, with respect, the general's plan would prove everything the Corvani believe about us, that we are monsters, that we hurt children. Even if it worked temporarily, we would lose any chance of real peace. And if it failed, we would make the queen even angrier. Another officer spoke up. Then what do we do? Give the child back? The queen will just kill whoever delivers him and attack anyway. Sung-jin raised his hand politely. Maybe not, sir. If we show the queen that we saved her son, that we protected him and cared for him, it might change something. Change what? Her hatred of us? Maybe not her hatred, but maybe her understanding of us. Admiral Yun-sik had been quiet, thinking deeply. Now he spoke. Corporal Taeho, you said you hoped being human meant something more than winning wars. What did you mean by that? Taeho thought carefully before answering. I meant that humans are supposed to be good, sir. Kind, merciful. We tell ourselves we fight wars to protect people, but if we're willing to hurt children to win, then we're not protecting anything worth having. We become the monsters our enemies think we are. He looked around the room at all the powerful officers. I'm just a corporal. I don't have the authority to make big decisions. But I know what's right. Returning this child to his mother safely is right. Showing the galaxy that humans have honor is right. Maybe it won't save us. Maybe the queen will still want revenge. But at least we'll face our end knowing we did the decent thing. The room was silent for a long time. Finally, Admiral Yun-sik stood up. I've commanded soldiers for 40 years, he said. I've given orders that sent thousands to their deaths. I've made hard choices because someone had to make them. He walked over to Taeho and looked at the small Corvani prince. But today I'm going to listen to a corporal, because he reminded me of something I almost forgot. We're not just fighting to survive, we're fighting to remain worthy of surviving. He turned to the room. We will return the prince to his mother, peacefully, openly. We will ask for nothing in return except the chance to explain that we found him alone and saved him. He paused. And we will hope that somewhere in that queen's heart, a mother's love is stronger than her hatred. General Park Jun shook his head. This is insane. Maybe, Yoon-sik agreed. But it's the right kind of insane. He looked at Tai-ho. Corporal, are you willing to deliver the prince yourself? Tai-ho held Lithis closer. The tiny prince clicked happily. Yes, sir, I am. Then may God help us all. The greatest gamble in human history was about to begin. The diplomatic shuttle was small. It had no weapons. It had no armor. It could not fight and it could not run. All it could do was fly forward and hope. Tai-ho sat in the pilot seat, checking systems one last time. The shuttle's name was painted on the side. Hope's Light. Someone in the Alliance had thought that name was appropriate. Tai-ho was not sure if it was hopeful or sad. Behind him, Ha-na and Sung-jin were securing their supplies. You know you don't have to come, Tai-ho said. This is probably a one-way trip. Ha-na laughed without humor. If you think I'm letting you fly into enemy space alone with an alien prince and zero combat training, you're crazy. Besides, Sung-jin added, someone needs to make sure Lithis stays healthy. You still don't know anything about Corvani biology. In his special seat, little Lithis clicked happily. Over the past week, he had grown stronger. His shell was starting to harden slightly, and he had learned to make many different sounds. He especially liked making sounds when Tai-ho talked to him. All right, Tai-ho said, let's go save humanity. The shuttle launched from Earth's main spaceport. As they left the atmosphere, Tai-ho looked back at the blue planet below. His home, his family, everything he loved. He might never see it again. The journey to Corvani space would take 5 days. 5 days of flying through the emptiness of space, waiting to see if they would be destroyed before reaching their destination. On the first day, nothing happened. The shuttle flew in silence through empty space. Tai-ho took turns with Ha-na at the controls, while Sung-jin cared for Lithis. On the second day, they entered neutral territory. Other ships passed by, traders and travelers from various species. Some of them sent curious signals, wondering why a single human shuttle was flying toward Corvani space. Tai-ho broadcast the same message to everyone. Diplomatic mission, carrying peaceful message for the Corvani Queen. Please do not interfere. Most ships simply moved on. A few responded with messages wishing them luck. One captain from a species called the Malori sent them a warning. Turn back, humans. The Queen will destroy you. They kept flying. On the third day, they crossed into Corvani territory. Within minutes, they were surrounded. 12 Corvani warships appeared from nowhere, circling the tiny shuttle like predators around prey. Each warship was 100 times bigger than their little vessel. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Tai-ho's hands shook as he reached for the communication system. Corvani vessels, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. This is the human shuttle Hope's Light. We are on a diplomatic mission. We carry no weapons. We mean no harm. Please allow us to pass. The response came immediately. A harsh Corvani voice filled the shuttle. Human vessel, you have entered Corvani space illegally. Prepare to be destroyed. Hana grabbed the communication device. Wait, we have Prince Lithis, the Queen's son. He is alive. Silence. Then the same voice, now uncertain. Impossible. The prince was killed by your people. Tai-ho held Lithis up to the video screen. The tiny prince looked at the camera with curious eyes and made his happy clicking sound. On every Corvani warship, Officers stared at their screens in disbelief. They recognized those royal markings. They knew that small face. Somehow, impossibly, the prince was alive, and he was in the arms of a human. "We found him in the ruins of the outpost," Taeho explained. "He was alone and frightened. We took care of him. We kept him safe. Now we are bringing him home to his mother." More silence. Finally, a different Corvani voice spoke. An older voice, a commander. "Human, why would you do this? Why save the child of your enemy?" Taeho thought about the question. He thought about all the complicated reasons, all the political considerations, all the strategic thinking. Then he gave the simple truth. "Because he was a baby who needed help. That's all." The Corvani warships did not fire. Instead, they formed an escort around the tiny shuttle and guided it deeper into their space. News spread across the Corvani Empire like fire. The prince was alive. Humans had saved him. Humans were bringing him home. No one knew what to believe. No one knew what would happen next. On the fourth day of the journey, something beautiful happened. Lethis spoke his first word. Taeho was feeding him when the little prince made a sound he had never made before. Not clicking, not humming. An actual word. Taeho. Taeho froze. His heart seemed to stop. "What did you say?" he whispered. "Taeho!" Lithis repeated, reaching his small arms up toward the human's face. "Taeho! Taeho!" Sungjin and Ha-Na came running. Did he just say your name?" Hana asked, her eyes wide. Taeho nodded slowly. Tears were forming in his eyes. I think he did." Lithis continued clicking and repeating the name, clearly proud of himself. His first word was the name of the human who had saved him, the human who had kept him warm during cold nights, the human who had fed him when he was hungry, the human who had become, in some strange way, his guardian. That night, Taeho held Lithis while the little prince slept. He looked at the innocent creature in his arms and felt something deep in his chest. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he whispered, "I want you to know that I'm glad I found you. I'm glad I saved you. You taught me what being human really means." Lithis clicked softly in his sleep. On the fifth day, they arrived at Catharis Prime. The Corvani homeworld was magnificent. Crystal towers reached toward the sky. Massive cities spread across the continents. Ships of every size filled the space around the planet. And waiting for them was a fleet of 1,000 warships. Taeho's hands were steady now. He was not afraid anymore. Whatever happened, he had done the right thing. He had kept his promise. The shuttle began its descent toward the planet's surface, toward the Queen's palace, toward the moment that would decide the fate of two species. Taeho looked at Lithis one more time. "Let's take you home, little one," he said softly. "Let's take you to your mom." Lithis clicked happily. "Taeho," he said, and somehow that made everything feel okay. The ceiling was so high that clouds could form inside. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with soft purple light. Thousands of Corvani warriors stood in perfect rows on either side of a long pathway. Each warrior held a weapon ready. Each warrior stared at Taeho with hatred in their black eyes. At the far end of the chamber, on a throne that looked like it was grown from a single massive crystal, sat Queen Vithara. She was terrifying. Her body was larger than any Corvani Taeho had seen. Her shell was deep purple, almost black, and it seemed to absorb the light around her. Her 4 arms gripped the throne so tightly that the crystal cracked beneath her fingers. Her eyes burned with a fury that could melt steel. Taeho walked forward alone. Ha-Na and Sungjin had been stopped at the entrance. The Corvani guards would not let them enter. Only Taeho was allowed to approach the queen, carrying the small bundle in his arms. Each step felt like it took forever. The warriors watched him with deadly focus. If anyone gave the order, he would be torn apart in seconds. He knew this. He accepted it. He kept walking. High Commander Borath stood beside the Queen's throne, his scarred face twisted with hatred as he watched the human approach. "My Queen," Borath said loudly, "this is a trick. The humans are trying to deceive you. Kill this creature now and attack their worlds as planned." Queen Vithara did not respond. Her eyes were fixed on the bundle in Tai-Ho's arms. She could not see what was inside. She did not dare to hope. Hope had hurt her too much already. Tai-Ho stopped at the bottom of the steps that led to the throne. He was supposed to kneel before a ruler of her status. Every Corvani in the room expected him to fall to his knees and beg. Instead, he spoke. "Queen Vithara," he said. His voice was clear and steady. "My name is Tai-Ho. I am a soldier of the Human Alliance. I was part of the force that attacked the Eris 7 outpost." Angry clicks filled the room. Warriors shifted their weapons. Borath smiled cruelly. "You admit it? You admit to attacking us? To killing?" "I admit that we fought," Tai-Ho interrupted. "But I did not come here to talk about fighting. I came here to return something that belongs to you." He climbed the first step. Warriors moved forward, ready to stop him. "Let him approach," Queen Vithara said. Her voice was quiet, but it silenced everything else. "Let him show me what he carries." Tai-Ho climbed the remaining steps until he stood directly before the Queen. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her presence was like a physical force pressing against him. But he was not afraid. He looked into her eyes and saw something behind the fury. Something broken. Something that had been crying for days, a mother's grief. After the battle, Tai-Ho said softly, "I searched the ruins. In what used to be a nursery, I found a child, alone, scared, surrounded by fire and death." Queen Vithara's breathing became heavy. "My training told me to leave him. My orders told me he was the enemy. Every rule I had ever learned said he was not my responsibility." Tai-Ho paused. "But I looked at him and I saw a baby. Just a baby who needed help. So I helped him." He knelt down slowly and placed the bundle on the floor. Then he carefully unwrapped the blanket. Lithis looked up at the bright lights of the throne room with wonder. He clicked happily, not understanding where he was or why so many people were staring at him. Queen Vithara made a sound that was not quite a gasp and not quite a cry. It was something in between, something raw and primal. "Lithis," she whispered. "He has been safe with me," Tai-Ho continued. "I fed him when he was hungry. I kept him warm when he was cold. I stayed awake at night when he couldn't sleep. I did not do these things because of politics or strategy. I did them because—" He took a deep breath. "Because protecting children is what humans do. Even children who are not our own. Even children of our enemies." The throne room was completely silent. Borath's face had gone pale. This is impossible. This must be some kind of copy. Some clone created to—" "It is him," Queen Vithara said quietly. Her eyes had not left her son. "I would know my child anywhere. I know his scent. I know his sounds. This is my Lithis." She rose from her throne. Every Corvani in the room held their breath. She descended the steps toward where Lithis sat on the floor. Her movements were slow, almost dreamlike, like she was afraid that if she moved too fast, this vision would disappear. She knelt before her son. Lithis looked up at her with his large black eyes. He made a confused clicking sound. He had been so young when they were separated. Did he even remember her? Then his eyes seemed to recognize something. Some deep memory stirred in his tiny mind. He reached up toward her with his small arms, and then he spoke. "Tai-Ho!" he said first, pointing back at the human who had raised him. "Tai-Ho! Tai-Ho!" Tai-Ho smiled through his tears. "That's right, little one. But look who this is." Lithis turned back to the queen. He studied her face. He listened to her breathing. He felt the connection that exists between every mother and child. And then he said it, in perfect Corvani language. "Mom, I'm home!" Queen Vithara broke. All the fury, all the hatred, all the pain she had carried for weeks shattered into pieces. She grabbed her son and held him against her chest like she would never let go. Her whole body shook with sobs. She made sounds that no one in that room had ever heard her make before. The sounds of a mother reunited with her child. Tejo stepped back quietly. His job was done. But Vithara reached out and grabbed his arm with one of her hands. Her grip was strong, but not painful. "Human," she said through her tears. "Tejo, why? Why did you save him? Why did you risk everything to bring him back to me?" Tejo looked at her, this powerful queen who could destroy his entire species with a word. He looked at the child in her arms. And he gave her the same answer he had given everyone else. Because he was scared and alone. Because that's what humans do. Vithara stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked every Corvani in the room. She bowed her head to him. "I was wrong about your kind," she whispered. "I thought you were monsters. But a monster would not do what you did. A monster would not care for an enemy's child like his own." She stood up, still holding Lithis. "High Commander Borath," she said loudly. Borath stepped forward uncertainly. "Yes, my queen? Order the fleet to stand down. Cancel all attack plans. We will not be going to war today." Borath's mouth fell open. "But my queen, this human showed my son more kindness than many of our own people have ever shown." Her voice was firm now, commanding. "He did not have to save Lithis. He chose to, at great risk to himself, at great cost to his own people." She looked at Tejo with something like respect. That kind of choice deserves recognition, not destruction. Borath tried to argue, but Vithara silenced him with a look. "It is decided. The war stops here." And just like that, billions of lives were saved. Because one soldier refused to let a child die alone. The war was over. The Corvani fleet was standing down. And somehow, impossibly, peace had been achieved not through weapons or threats, but through kindness. On every human world, people celebrated in the streets. Parents hugged their children, grateful that they still had a future. Soldiers put down their weapons and cried tears of relief. The nightmare that had seemed certain just days ago had simply ended. In the grand throne chamber of Catharis Prime, Queen Vithara stood before Tejo, Hana, and Sung Jin. Lithis was in her arms, clicking happily and occasionally saying Tejo to anyone who would listen. "I have thought about what to do with you," the queen said. Her voice was different now, softer, more thoughtful. "Some of my advisors wanted me to keep you as prisoners. Others suggested I should send you home quietly and pretend this never happened." She paused. "I have decided to do neither." She reached up and removed a small crystal from her crown. It glowed with inner light. "Tejo, I am naming you Friend of the Throne. This is the highest honor I can give to any non-Corvani. It means that you and your descendants will always be welcome in our empire. You will have my protection wherever you go. And anyone who harms you will answer to me personally." Tejo bowed his head. "Thank you, Queen Vithara. But I don't need rewards. I only did what was right." "I know," Vithara said. "That is why you deserve the reward. People who do good things without expecting anything in return are the rarest beings in the universe." She turned to Hana and Sung Jin. "You two also supported this human when he needed it most. You risked your lives and careers to protect my son. You are also named Friends of the Throne." Hana was too surprised to speak. Sung Jin managed a quiet, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Over the following weeks, everything changed. Diplomatic teams from both species met for the first time in 50 years. They talked not as enemies, but as potential allies. The discussions were long and difficult. 50 years of war had created deep wounds that would not heal quickly, but for the first time, healing seemed possible. Admiral Yunsik led the human delegation. He was surprised to find that Queen Vithara was thoughtful and reasonable when she was not consumed by grief. They agreed to a ceasefire that would become a permanent peace treaty. They agreed to exchange prisoners. They agreed to open borders for trade and travel. It was not perfect. Some humans still hated the Corvani. Some Corvani still hated humans. High Commander Borath resigned in protest and spent the rest of his life complaining that peace was a mistake. But generation by generation, the hatred faded. Children grew up hearing the story of Taiho and Lithis. They learned that enemies could become friends. They learned that kindness was stronger than cruelty. They learned that one person's choice to do the right thing could change history. Taiho returned to Earth as a hero. Parades were held in his honor. Leaders wanted to give him medals and promotions. News reporters wanted to interview him constantly. He refused most of it. Instead, he retired from the military and became a teacher. He taught young people about compassion and courage. He told them that being human was not about being powerful. It was about being good. Hana became a diplomat, working on human Corvani relations for the rest of her career. She was known for her fairness and her ability to understand both sides of any disagreement. Sungjin opened a medical clinic that served both humans and aliens. He became famous across the galaxy as a doctor who would treat anyone, regardless of species, for free. And Lithis? Lithis grew up to become the most remarkable prince in Corvani history. He studied human culture alongside Corvani traditions. He learned to speak 5 human languages. He often visited Earth, where he was welcomed as a beloved guest. He became living proof that the two species could understand each other. When Lithis turned 30 years old, still young by Corvani standards, Queen Vithara made an announcement. Lithis would serve as the first Corvani ambassador to Earth, a permanent bridge between two worlds that had once been enemies. On the day Lithis arrived on Earth for his new position, he had one stop to make before his official duties began. The shuttle landed in a small town called Incheon, on the coast of what used to be called Korea. It was a quiet place, far from the big cities where important political events happened. Lithis walked down a simple street to a modest house. He was tall now, his shell a deep blue that marked him as royalty. His movements were graceful and confident. But when he knocked on the door, he felt like a child again. The door opened. Tae-ho stood there. He was older now, his hair gray, his face lined with years, but his eyes were the same, kind, gentle, full of warmth. Lithis looked at the human who had saved him so long ago, the human who had found him scared and alone and chose to help instead of hurt. The human who had taught him, without even meaning to, what compassion really meant. "Hello, Tae-ho," Lithis said. His voice was deep now, nothing like the tiny clicking sounds he had made as a baby. Tae-ho smiled. It was the same smile he had given Lithis when he first found him in the ruins of that nursery. "Hello, little one," Tae-ho said. "You got big." Lithis laughed, a real laugh, warm and full of joy. "I brought you something," Lithis said. He handed Tae-ho a small package. Inside was a crystal from Catharis Prime. It glowed with soft purple light, the same color as the Queen's throne. "My mother wanted you to have this," Lithis explained. "She said that whenever you look at it, you should remember that your kindness created something beautiful." Tae-ho held the crystal carefully. His eyes glistened with tears. "I'm glad you're okay, Lithis. I always wondered how you turned out." "I turned out well," Lithis said, "because of you." He stepped forward and embraced his old guardian. It was a strange sight, a tall, powerful Corvani prince hugging an elderly human man, but to both of them it felt completely natural. I came to say something I should have said long ago, Lithis said quietly. What's that? Lithis pulled back and looked Te-Ho in the eyes, the same eyes that had looked at him with kindness on the worst day of his life. Thank you, Lithis said, for everything. Then he smiled. And also, I'm home, Guardian. I'm finally home. Te-Ho laughed and hugged him again. Somewhere in the universe, stars were born and died. Wars began and ended. Empires rose and fell. But in that small house, in that quiet moment, two beings who should have been enemies shared the warmth of a family reunion. And that, perhaps, was humanity's greatest strength. Not weapons or technology or cleverness, just the simple, powerful choice to be kind, to protect the helpless, to love without condition. That was what it meant to be human, and that was why, across the galaxy, beings of every species had learned to say 4 simple words with respect and wonder. Humanity? Yes, we know them. They're the ones who care.